Hi, welcome to Senior Strategies. I'm Amy Decker, and I am Director of Client Services with Senior Helpers. And we've got some great guests that are going to be coming up soon that are going to be talking about the importance of making sure you're getting the legal representation, the legal paperwork, and everything you need so that if somebody ever has to make decisions for you, you've got the right person in place. You know, we find that when seniors get to a certain age, being able to work with seniors for so many years, both with families and with the senior, we find that they wait very often until it's almost too late before they make a decision of who's going to make decisions for them. Sometimes they hold off even accepting care in the home. They don't want anybody to come in and help them, assist them with bathing or meal preps or med reminders. You know, we all wake up with a purpose in life. And after a while, we find that so many of those things are taken away from us. And we no longer have a purpose. And so to accept help sometimes is really difficult. And yet the kids are struggling to get their family to take the help that they need. So very often they wait to use their long-term care policies that they've paid on for years and years because they want to wait until they're really ready and they really need it. And now they're 99 years old and legally blind and hard of hearing, and they're going to wait. And then very often, it's so sad, they end up passing and never use any of that insurance they've paid on for so many years, and they get no benefits from it at all. The same is true with deciding who can make decisions for you. They often couples will have each other as their power of attorney or healthcare surrogate. And that's fine. That's great. But you should always have a successor, always have somebody else in place so that if that person is not able to do that, then you've got a child or you've got somebody that you trust and care for and knows what you want to make those decisions for you. So today we're going to be speaking to, we've got some wonderful guests, and we are going to be talking to two attorneys from the law offices of Harold H. Weisman. We have Sharon Krinsky Brown, and she's an estate planning and probate and trust administrator for this law firm. And then we also have Wendi S. Weisman, who focuses on estate planning, title insurance, and real estate transactions. So we're looking forward to hearing from them both and finding out about the do's and the don'ts of what you should do with your legal paperwork, your power of attorney, even real estate transactions. So coming up, we're going to learn more from them, and we look forward to sharing that with you. See you soon. Welcome to Senior Strategies, Tools for the Caregiver with Amy Decker and Shane Silver. Join us on each show where you're going to enjoy a lively conversation that's going to connect you to the tools and resources that you'll need to coordinate care for the seniors in your life. We are so happy that you joined us. Hi, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have a couple of attorneys with us today to talk about the importance of getting our estates in order, getting the person that we want to make decisions for ourselves, where they need to be, and making sure that we check on that paperwork and those legal documents, just to make sure that those people are A, still alive, or B, we still want that person to make those decisions for us. But I think we're going to learn a lot today. Both Sharon Krinsky Brown and Wendi Weisman work for the law office of Harold H. Weisman, PA, and we are excited to have you both. And so Wendi, yeah, Wendi, why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got what you're doing?
Well, thank you very much for having us today. And I hope that we will be able to impart some knowledge that people don't have. Mm-hmm. And if they do have it, maybe we can clear up some of the misnomers, the listening to people around the swimming pool kind of conversations.
Yes.
That a one-size-fits-all type of situation.
Right.
I grew up in Framingham, Massachusetts. My father was an attorney. And my mother was his legal secretary. They moved to Florida in my senior year of high school, and the rest is history. I became an attorney. I guess it was in the blood. My father passed away a year ago, so I'm officially just Sharon and I on our own. My dad had retired a few years before. And our office is primarily a senior office. That's what we call ourselves, a senior office. We're very senior friendly. Mm-hmm. We do things that seniors typically need. So seniors typically need estate planning. Seniors ultimately may need a probate. Seniors need sometimes a guardianship. Sometimes they're selling a real property. We do real estate and title insurance. What we don't do is typically what seniors don't do, and that is get into criminal trouble. And most of my seniors aren't getting divorced at this point in their life. So we kind of stay away from the family law and the criminal, as it's just not what my community is. We've been in this community since 1978.
Wow.
Not me. I was a kid. But the business my father opened in 1978, we were one of the only attorneys out here in the West Delray area, although it's Military Trail, kind of strange to call it West Delray. And that's a little bit of what we have at this firm. Sharon's been with me
20 plus years.
Oh.
and she's also my best friend now.
Aw. And
Yeah.
Sharon, what's your main focus?
My main focus began as probate, but the more you do probate, the more the other areas come into play. There's a lot of real estate that ties into probate, and certainly estate planning, because as much as we like the probates, once we get them, we really try to advise our clients how to avoid probate. And there are many other ways to do it other than, everyone comes in, I need a trust. But
Right.
there's other planning that we do with our clients. We don't like to take our clients' money if they don't need to spend it. Like Wendy said, there's a lot of misinformation out there that spreads around, whether it's, at the country club or the pool or just a friend. And we really sit them down and go over everything they have, tell them what they can do that's totally not related to what we would do for them, but what they can do on their own, just to take the steps to make it easier for themselves and their family when the time comes.
Sure. And what would you say is your biggest suggestion to keep somebody from going into probate? What steps would they need to do?
Well, the most important thing to step back and say is, I do not want to die owning anything in my own name. Now, I want to be very clear about that. That does not mean I'm advocating that mom and dad put their children jointly on their bank accounts. That would be the most foolish, ridiculous thing anybody could ever do, because using common sense, you add someone to your account, they bring liability. We don't need liability. We want planning, not liability. An example, a mother joins her daughter on her savings account, has $100,000 in it, and the daughter goes to the office Christmas party, drives home, has a little bit too much to drink, has an accident, gets sued. They attach mom's account. Mom is arguing, wait a minute, why are you freezing my account? That's my money. And the court says, you can't have it both ways. You can't say it's my money, but I want to avoid having probate, so I'm going to stick my daughter on it. And you can explain ultimately contribution, but meanwhile, mom's money is frozen and the daughter feels horrible.
Right.
So there's so many more intelligent ways of doing it than something as foolish as that. So what we suggest is that you come in and we ask you, tell us what you have. We're not trying to be nosy. And you don't have to tell us an amount if you don't want to tell us an amount. The more information you give us, the better we can advise you. But as Sharon said, a lot of people come in with this misnomer, I must have a trust. My children told me to come and get a trust. And listen, as attorneys, we make more money the more complicated the documents you do.
Right.
But the philosophy of this law firm from my father has always been, we are not the law firm that is going to drive the Rolls Royces and the Bentleys. We're the law firm that will have a nice living, but we'll go to bed, the lawyers, at night, put their heads on their pillows, and know we did a decent day's job.
Right.
We do not encourage people to spend money that we do not believe they need to spend.
And I can't tell you how many times I have heard that, where they're like, I'm taking over my dad's bills, and so I'm going to make sure I go to the bank and but I never thought about that. So if you do get on their accounts and something happens, you're frozen out of it too. I never thought about that.
Their liabilities are attached to your money.
Wow.
The other thing is that people are very confused about is, I have a will, I'm good. I have a will. Well, that's not what happens. The will tells the court, when you have assets in your own name, where those assets should go. So a lot of clients don't need a will. If you are married to the same person, and our clients are married 40, 50 years and their children are all of the same marriage, they don't really need a will. First of all, we plan for and avoid probate, but they don't need the will if something should fall through the cracks and go to probate, because the laws of the state of Florida say that in that situation, the husband gets 100%. That's what the law says. Now, if the wife had been married before, and had a daughter and the wife dies, then that daughter is entitled to 50% and the spouse is entitled to 50%. So it's not all, and the will does not avoid probate. I can't even stress that enough, because people are absolutely come in here. I'm like, but I have a will. Well, that's not going to help.
So
you.
how is that the case that it doesn't avoid probate? So things
A
can-
will directs, a will is basically telling so you only need the will if you die with an asset in your own name, like Wendy described before. So I'm
like a
Sharon,
house, a car, well, not
a house, a car,
Bank accounts,
money,
you know,
right?
market.
back in the day, my mother had her meat money account. I don't know if my dad knew about it. So, years later, that account pops up and there's no other names on it. And there's $20,000 in it. And like, okay, how do we get this money? You have to go to probate. There's two ways that probate occurs. One is that the will is submitted to the court, and whatever the will says is how it's distributed. But if you don't have a will, the laws of Florida step in. And the laws are pretty much what you would think. It's bloodline laws. It's, it's spouses for each other. It's to children. There's no one that. It goes up to parents. It goes over to aunts and uncles. So oftentimes you don't need that unless if you have 3 children and one, either you've disinherited or you gave them plenty in their lifetime and you don't want them to get anything, then that would be important, because you want to not have them in the will if there should be something that's floating around.
That's
But we really, really tried. So one of the things we use very often in this office is for real property. For 2 reasons. If we do what's called a ladybird deed or a enhanced life estate deed, we can pass a property without going to probate. So that's a very useful tool. It also keeps the property in someone's name if they're at some point going to go for some kind of aid, planning.
right.
They don't sell the property to do that, and that kind of is tucked away. And when they die, it's just a few forms that get filed in the public record, recorded in the public record, and that property will pass for your probate. And that's a huge chunk of very many people's assets, is the
Right.
home that they live in.
Right.
And we usually say, look at a ladybird is nothing different than a pay on death, that you would go to the bank and say, I would like to put a pay on death to my 2 children on my checking and savings. So the account is still in your own name, no liability of your children. You die, your children bring a death certificate, their names are on the account, the bank closes the account, distributes the money, no will, no probate. Beautiful scenario. But there's one scenario we've talked about just before we get to someone dying, because dying is the easy part. It
Right.
really is. You're dead. Your family now has to deal with it, but you're gone. So what's more important to, I think, my seniors is that durable power of attorney, their healthcare surrogacy, and most importantly, their advance directive, that living will that says I do or do not want. I had a client on the phone yesterday, and we went round and round with this concept of the advance directive. And I tried it many different ways. And she said to me, I'd like you to write something in. And I said, well, it's statutory. I don't believe I will be writing anything in, but I'd love to hear what it is that you want me to write in to this very well-written statutory document. And she said, I'd like them to give it 10 days. 10 days from what? 10 days from the time the doctor says we should remove you from life support. And I said, you want to be courteous to people. You don't want to laugh. Sometimes it is a little bit funny. I did laugh because you have to lighten the subject. And I laughed. What's happening in that 10 days? Where did you come up with 10, not 14, not 21?
Did somebody tell her that? Did someone tell her that to do that?
She felt 10 days is the amount of time it would take to recover. And I said, but the death must be imminent in order for the living will to be effective. For the doctor actually to use it, your death has to be imminent. Anything short of that would be considered murder. We don't really kill people. Don't even get me started on that, but we don't. We don't necessarily try to kill people.
Right.
So I highly recommend an advance directive if your desire is the doctor comes to your family and says, you're laying in a bed, you're obviously unconscious, you're maybe in a coma, maybe whatever, and the doctor says, your loved one's death is imminent. That is a very important word. That's
Yeah.
when things start rolling.
Mhm.
But we need to know whether you'd like us to put a feeding tube in. The feeding tube will only act merely to extend the life.
Right.
Then we have to talk about what happens if you put the feeding tube in. Because a lot of people say, well, maybe it'll reverse.
You're
Well, I can
hungry.
assure you it won't reverse. But
No.
if you put the
Yeah.
feeding tube in, what happens is somebody who has no more brain function, but has one heck of a good ticking heart, ba-boom, ba-boom,
Right.
ba-boom, and they're getting food, they're going to live. But
A
you know
long
what?
time.
They're living in a hospital right now, and the hospital says, we need this bed.
Right.
You're not going to ever get any better, this person.
Right.
We're going to ship you out. And you know what? If there is no high level intensity place in Florida, not necessarily South Florida, in the state of Florida, they will transport you out of the state. So people will say, well, my family will come visit me. Probably not when you're in Alabama laying in a bed for 12 years.
Okay,
So-
wait a minute.
Yeah.
So the
yeah.
hospital will transfer you to another
So-
state?
So the hospital can only keep you under insurance rules
Oh, right.
while you are recovering, while
And-
there is a chance for recovery.
I
When you get to the point where you can't recover anymore, you go to a rehabilitation.
Right.
There's different levels of skilled care you need.
Mhm.
If there's no skilled nursing home that can take a person that is in the position, I use the example of Terry Schiavo,
Oh,
which
right.
a lot of people might be familiar
Right.
with. That case went on for years, and that's why we have
Yes.
strong law now. And our law says, listen, people, you need to have these discussions. They're hard. We know that. And we know that it's easy for us to have because we talk about them every day. We're desensitized. We
Right.
appreciate that the average senior is not desensitized. We understand the average senior is getting closer to the end than they were at the beginning. I feel that
Yeah.
way too some days. So
Right,
I
me too.
understand the fear, but
Yeah.
you must put the fear away
Right.
to set everything properly, like you've done your whole life.
Yeah.
You can't stop now. You
Mhm.
have to figure it out. And when there's an advance directive, you're not asking your children or your spouse to make a decision. My goodness, that would be something that would be very difficult for people to live with.
Yes.
You make it today. You're
Right.
of sound. Well, most of my clients are mildly sound mind, but you're of sound mind and body.
Right.
Mind and body. Make those decisions, those hard decisions. You know what? Once you make them, you probably aren't going to be changing your mind again. You
Right.
put it away and live a long, 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 healthy life. But knowing, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was really young, obviously I told you my father was a lawyer, and I saw the Karen and Ann Quinlan story on
Oh,
TV.
Yes.
I mean, of a certain age, seniors, you'll kind of remember, we're going back to like the 70s.
Yeah.
And I saw that thing on TV, and I looked at my father and said, I want one of those living wills. And he said, you're 15.
Right.
You can't have one. And he said, but I will tell you this, the day you turn 18, that will be my first gift to you, will be a living will. And I've had a living will since I have been 18 years old, because I was so watched that movie and saw what her family went through, saw what Karen went through for decades.
But I think it's a great idea for kids to get it at a young age. I think when your kids go off to college, they should have a healthcare surrogate, a living will. They go to a campus and they get too much to drink and they pass out. And now who's going to make decisions for them? But if they have that with them in their wallet, and I have a living will, this is who you can talk to. That's a perfect date. That's a great gift.
So, Amy, what you just said is so critical. I used to play in a tennis league, and one of the girls that played against me was telling us the story about her daughter at University of Florida, and had an impact in her tooth that somehow the infection raged through her body, and she was basically in a coma.
Wow.
And her mom went up there and was screaming, you'll do this and that. And they said, you'll get a guardianship. Your child is 19 years old.
Yep.
I have gone on law day to high schools and have offered on those law days, the day you turn 18, the same gift my father gave to me. I will give you a living will, and I will give you a power of attorney as my gift to you for graduating. Have these documents in place, because the day you turn 18,
forget it.
The law says mom and dad don't have a right to choose for you any longer.
Right.
And guardianship, as Sharon can tell you, we've been through many, many of them in this office, and they're very demoralizing if you have any competency. We strip every right you have in an open court.
Like the Britney Spears story.
Well,
Yeah, that's a whole nother show all by
Everyone
herself.
still
But
needs
now that
conserv-
she's now she's kind of making a name for herself. Like they probably should have kept her on it, but you know,
she should have been kept under it, but
I know.
but seniors, what we want to avoid is the need for this conservatorship or guardianship, because a power of attorney is not an expensive instrument to create.
Right.
But if you don't have it, and you
Guardianship
have
is
that
expensive.
stroke, and you cannot handle your financial or
Right.
personal affairs, a guardianship will happen, and the guardianship is thousands. And I put an S on the end of thousands because it's not 1 or 2,000, even 3,000. You're probably looking at 4,000 plus just to start a guardianship. And if it's not an emergency, you're at the mercy of the court when you get in there.
And the
Yep.
guardianship is also constant supervision. Everything you do, every dime you spend, you have
Right.
to account for, which in some cases
Is important.
is important. If you don't have anyone,
Right.
it's not the worst tool in the world, but we strongly tell people to look around. You have to be comfortable with it, but really, really explore. A lot of people think, well, they're not here. I can't name them. They're not here, but there's so much done. I mean, Zoom, electronically, computers. Doesn't really have to be someone who lives next door or in Boca or in, it
Right.
can be someone you trust is the most important
Trust.
part.
And we've
Trust.
had that with some of our clients where it's come up where the mom has money, doesn't have a spouse, never made anybody a power of attorney or a healthcare surrogate, and now she's losing her marbles. And the daughters want to help, but she refuses to give them the power of attorney so then we offer the guardianship. What happened, I think, with the case that we just dealt with. So if it's an emergency type situation, which in this case it was, and you go to the state, can they have, I mean, obviously you would take it on as a guardianship, but is the family able to step up and say, I would like to be her guardian?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. And in most cases, they would choose the family member, right?
Absolutely. Emergency, the difference between an emergency and a regular is just time. With an emergency temporary guardianship, and that is really key, it's not an emergency guardianship. It's an emergency temporary guardian, an ETG.
Gotcha.
Temporary.
So
It's
something
until we can get everything set up properly and having an examining committee go in.
Right.
Part of the guardianship is the actual examining committee appointed by the court statutorily, that we have a lay person that goes out and meets with the proposed, what we call ward. And
Right.
the court has a doctor or a psychologist go out and a social worker. And each one meets with that individual ward. And in addition, the ward is appointed legal counsel by the state. So all this is being paid for by the ward, if she has money or he has money.
I see.
With an emergency guardianship, we bypass all those other steps. We push them down the road just a bit, because like an example of an emergency that I had a woman who had a stroke on a Friday morning. Her son was in Georgia. Unfortunately, the way the stroke hit her, she couldn't swallow.
Oh.
Without emergency surgery, she will die. With emergency surgery, she'll be fine. But she couldn't swallow and she couldn't communicate. The son was in Georgia, no power of attorney.
Oh.
He called me in the morning. We had an emergency temporary guardianship that afternoon, because there is always a judge on call for an emergency.
Mhm.
We had an emergency guard. Now, that did not mean the court would necessarily leave him for all of it. This was for the emergency. Get him to have permission to tell the doctor, do the surgery, save my mom. Ultimately, we then had to complete the guardianship the proper way. Unfortunately, mother regained her competency, and ultimately the guardianship was dissolved because she recovered and moved with her son back to Georgia. So it ended as a very positive story, but it started as wow, it's Friday morning and there's no court on Friday, but we all know that there's an emergency judge on call for a true emergency.
Right.
And honestly, in my entire 30+ year career, I think I've only asked a judge for a true emergency less than 4 times.
Wow.
It has to be so beyond serious.
Critical, very like life or death, obviously. Life or death.
I think that is the way you go. And I think
Yeah.
that others may abuse the system. We don't.
Mhm.
I don't know if Sharon's had any emergencies, but I've had to do it a few times, and I've
Yeah.
had judges very, very, very quick working on those situations. And then we slow the process down and
Right.
fix it.
Right.
But our goal, obviously, is to avoid that.
Exactly.
And how do you avoid it? A durable power of attorney, appointing someone you trust, and a backup. Because just because your child is younger than you, unfortunately, we have tragedies and sadness in life.
Right.
Or we have children that travel. My son's in the military. He's now in Greece. That's probably not the best person to work with.
Right.
It's going to be very difficult for them. We want
Right.
someone that's probably in the United States, not necessarily Florida, as Sharon said. They don't have to be next door.
Right.
We're so, as we're doing this today.
Right.
In 4 years ago, you and me and Sharon would be sitting down together.
Exactly. Right.
Doing this.
Right.
Nowadays, we do entire 2-day trials like this.
Like this.
Thank you, COVID. It has changed a lot of the way we.
It has. It really has. And you know what we find very often, I think I said this at the beginning of it too, is so often a married couple will make each other the power of attorney, the healthcare, and that's great. That's great. But there should always be, like you said, somebody else, because if they're on a trip together, or they're both aging and now their mental capacity is going, there's got to be somebody else in line. And very often they're afraid, they think if they're going to put their child as a successor or the one that can make decisions, now all of a sudden that child is able to make decisions for them. They can't.
Well, you can't. There's different ways to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
you can do it. You can do it jointly, which we often discourage because that means every decision is jointly.
Yeah.
Many times we'll do spouses for each other, but another child will also be individually and or jointly, and that gives the opportunity for the spouse to do it. But if the spouse starts losing it or cannot do it, the child has to step in without really any kind of documentation as to why they're doing it instead of the spouse.
Right.
And then there's always a line of succession. You can do it that way too. It's mom for dad, dad for mom, and then, you know, in my family it was my brother, my sister, then me. I'm the attorney, but I was third in line because I was the youngest until I yelled at them and made them put me first in
As
line.
the first one. Right. Right. But
Nope.
that's important. So for people out there, so we've got, we've got viewers and listeners all over the place. So say we've got, children that live in Calgary, Canada, or the UK, their folks live down here. What would you say would be the most important thing that they should be looking at right now with their mom and dad? What is the legal paperwork that they should make sure their parents have in place right now?
No matter where you live, where your children live, that's really not the important part. The important part is every single person, I don't care if you're a senior or you're 50 or you're 20, should have at least as a minimum a durable power of attorney. The number one most important thing. Why? Be selfish for yourself.
Yeah.
This is only valid
Living.
while you are alive. When you're dead,
Right.
your will kicks in. When you're
Right.
dead, get your popcorn and watch from heaven. Some of us may not be there, but we watch from someplace and watch the family kill each other.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that power of attorney keeps you out of guardianship court. You can only appoint someone that you trust. It is not, oh, I had one yesterday and she goes, I really want to appoint my brother, but my cousin Tony is so much more responsible. And then 5 minutes goes by and she says, yeah, my brother, but boy, and I finally said, I'm going to give you some permission here. And she said, what? And I said, I think you are looking for permission. And
Yeah.
she said, for what? And I said, I am appointing your cousin Tony to be in charge, and I will put your brother as his backup. And she said, that's really what I want. And I said, it's a guilt. He's my brother. He'll be mad at me. Listen to me. It is not about someone being mad at you. This is your life. This is your money. This is your future. It is not a popularity contest. It's not, I'll hurt one of my kids' feelings. That's all just not necessary. And I'll tell you something else. You don't have to tell which kid is appointed. Tell your kids, I have legal documents. They're located if you're in Florida, we make sure if they're in the house, they're in a Ziploc waterproof baggie before you put them anywhere.
Because you're not going to be there when they find out anyway. They're going to find out who's in. It doesn't matter. You're not around to watch that. So
so for me, the power of attorney is critical.
Power of attorney.
And the living will, that advance directive where you take responsibility of your own end of life. Don't force somebody else to
make those
figure out
decisions.
what does mother want.
Right.
That's number 2. Number 3, healthcare surrogate.
Yeah.
appoint someone to speak. Sometimes we say, you know, my daughter has no idea about money. I give her 50, she spends 350, but she's a nurse. There is nobody better to go to than my daughter for medical. Hello, put your daughter on the healthcare power of attorney,
Right.
and put your responsible son on the financial.
Right.
No hurt feelings. Somebody
Right.
has a role in each part.
Right.
Those are documents that are critical for your everyday life as we get older. Then there is the planning for your money when you're not going to be here. And that's when we get into will or trust. And we talk about a trust when we have different situations. And Sharon kind of alluded to it a moment ago when she talked about, you know, you have 3 kids, but maybe one of them is special. They need a little bit of extra help. You love them. So sometimes we'll say, you know, if I die, Sally and Peter will be fine, but Herman, oh yeah, 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 yeah. But I love my son Herman. I want him to be taken care of. I know what I want to do. I'm going to say, I'd like to create a trust. I'm going to put all my assets in the trust so I can step back and answer that first question. Do I have any assets in my own name? That's how we started this thing.
Right.
No, everything is owned by my trust. Who is the beneficiary of my trust? I am. While I am alive. Who is the boss of the trust? I am, because I'm alive. What happens if I lose my mental faculties? I'm still the only beneficiary. I just can't be in charge. I've named a successor. And we've talked about, you know, picking right people.
Right.
It's for the power of attorney, the trustee. These are people who are going to be involved in your day-to-day finances. If your kids have filed bankruptcy, if your kids have drug addiction, they have mental health issues, they have alcoholism, they have any of
They're workaholics,
they're in
they
the
don't have time for you.
workaholics, they tell you, please don't bother me. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of these, your kids have told you, listen. It doesn't mean you don't have to love them. It means appoint somebody different.
Right.
We work with people to help them figure out who that right person is. And sometimes we will look at a client who has no children, no spouse. Their friends were all dead. Their closest relative hasn't spoken to them in 25 years. What do? Then you have to start thinking corporate trustee, an attorney trustee. And so we go
like a
through
neutral
all those
party.
different-
Right.
We go through all those different levels with our clients. That's why we said at the beginning, you can't get this information around a swimming pool because your life as a single woman with no children is not the same as a first marriage with 2 kids or a third marriage with a prenuptial agreement. You know, everybody's life is different, and everybody's what they recall from a meeting with an attorney. And we really hammer it, but we'll have a client come back and we'll say, do you remember what we talked about? And they'll look at me and go,
Nope.
nope.
Sometimes it's overwhelming. And I think too, when I worked for a law firm too, often when you get that first phone call, usually something's going on. They're not really being proactive in many cases. Something's going on. They're panicked. Family dynamics are getting involved. And now we have to come in and meet with you. So they get so much information often on that first appointment that they can't even digest all of that, especially if there's an emergency situation going on. So it's hard.
We get a lot of calls from children. I need a power of attorney.
Yeah.
Okay. Mom have capacity? No, that's why I need the power of attorney. Eeks.
Too late. Too late.
Yeah. And I'm a notary, and I've even had where somebody called me from the hospital, a client of ours, and the daughter called and said, we need you to come to the hospital and meet with me tonight to notarize this power of attorney form that I'm taking position over my father. I said, well, where is your father? Well, he's here. Is he conscious? No. Does he have capacity to say that it's okay to do that? No. Well, guess what? I'm not coming. I'm not going to come and note.
There are rare circumstances, like if there's 3 kids and you're putting, I mean, you can push the line a little, but there's many times when they're like, you're just out of luck at that point.
But clearly, if someone is unconscious, I would say their line should be drawn absolutely nothing, no gray there.
No, I know. And she's literally over the bed writing out the paperwork for me to just pop in and notarize it for her. I'm like,
if you see the person who asked you holding the hand of the person who's unconscious, probably not a good idea to know.
Not a good idea. So let me ask you this. So you've given us so much good information. We've got people from all over now that maybe would want to touch base with you, what is the best way to get in touch with you and to make an appointment to speak?
So the best way obviously is to call into the office. Our number is 561-498-0017. And you certainly let them know that that you saw this podcast and that you want to get more information. You could select either one of us, or you'll just get randomly assigned based on what time is best for you and schedule. And we're going to go over everything, even though it's repetitive, because I believe in the rule of 3. If you hear it 3 times, it's probably going to be somewhere into that. And
repetition.
The last thing we want to do is sell a client a trust, have them leave here with the paper we created, and the only thing in their trust is the house we put in there.
Yeah.
Everything else they left here with, did she tell us to do something? And never, ever, ever fund the trust. And if they don't fund that trust, and funding it means, and people say, oh, this is complicated. Well, it wasn't complicated when you went to the bank and your husband died and you changed the bank account to you and your child. That's no different. All we're saying is contact your financial people, whether it's banks or brokerage firms, and let them know, I have a trust. We give you documentation to provide to them. It's a memorandum of that trust. And we tell you, please have them retitle your assets. So everything is owned by the trust. If you become incapacitated, your child steps in as the trustee.
Right.
You're still getting taken care of. When you pass, maybe 2 kids are getting their money outright, and maybe Herman's money is being held and distributed. They don't want to bother with this because he has SSI benefits, and giving him a lump sum of money will blow his benefits. But yet that lump sum of money will be gone in 5 years. So we have to be very cautious. So we're going to ask you. We're going to get personal with you. And what happens is, what I have found, and I think Sharon feels the same way, is when we have this meeting with you, whether it's face-to-face, we'll do a Zoom, or love you to come into the office. We'll do it by phone. We're post-pandemic people.
Right.
But what we find, and I think Sharon will agree, is that once we impart our knowledge on you and it clicks in your head, there's such a gratefulness between you and us. It is incredible. Our clients, they'll bring us in cookies, and we're like, why? Because you have no idea the peace of mind I had.
And what you taught me. Yeah. I mean, even just at the very beginning where you said, so many kids feel they got to get on the bank account with their mom and dad to get in there. I'd never thought about that. So when you learn something that valuable that can save you so much heartache and money and time and
critical.
One thing I wanted to add, because we are speaking to people all around, it's very important if anyone in your family owns the property in Florida, but could be a resident of another state. You really want to take care of that Florida property with a deed, because otherwise you end up with two probates. One in the state you live in, because real property in Florida has to go through Florida probate if you don't make the
excellent point.
Excellent
point. And that would be for every snowbird out there that is not a Florida resident, that just comes and uses the sunshine for 6 months of the year.
Right.
Or 5 months and 29 days.
Yeah.
And you have that beautiful house. We have a lot of them going on. The Canadians, a lot of Canadians.
Yes. Lot.
And then die as Canadians. And we have Florida probates.
Wow.
And they not even had to have a Canadian probate, but now they're going to have a Canadian probate because we've got a Canadian will.
That's an awesome point.
With a French will. We had someone bring something in here the other day. It was in Hebrew.
Oh,
Sharon and I looked at each other going, okay, first it needs to get translated. Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
It gives us a
wow. See, and you know what? You've had so much years of experience, so you know exactly what people need to hear. You know exactly how many times they need to hear it before they get it. And I think that's why that's the best part of this program, is having professionals like you saying, don't Google it. Don't try and make your stuff online by yourself. Don't be sitting around a bar having a beer, writing out what you think you should be doing. Go to a professional.
The beer though, that's okay.
You can do that part, right? But go to a professional. And so I'm excited that we were able to feature you today on our program. Again, if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to them. You can also reach out to me on our Facebook page as well as our Instagram. My email address is seniorstrategies.pb@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to the gals here. Any other tidbits you'd like to share or contact information?
My email is my first initial W and my last name Weisman. So it's WWEISMAN at HWeismanLaw.com. And we would welcome your questions.
Good.
We have a great staff.
You will love our office. We're all girls.
We're all women.
We're all girls. And we're real nice. And we
like to help people.
And I think we know what we're doing.
We do our practice with our hearts and our heads, but our hearts are right up there in there.
Right.
So.
And you're fun. You're easy to talk to. You're easy to be with. It's fun. I think it puts people's mind at ease when they can sit and laugh about a few things and still talk about a critical conversation.
It's a very scary concept for a lot of people, even though we all know one day we are going to die. You, Amy, me, and Sharon, we deal with this on a daily basis, so we can use the word die and move on with our day and not even give a second thought of it.
Right.
But we have to always be mindful that because we're familiar with it and we're okay with it and we're accepting of those words.
Yeah.
Our seniors are scared.
Right.
And their kids are scared.
Yes.
And need somebody that will talk to them at a level they can understand.
Right.
Not be a stuck-up attorney, but be a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Be a counselor. I remember as a young
And be a comfort.
lawyer. Yeah, I remember as a young lawyer, someone said to me, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a lawyer." And the woman said to me, "You are going to be an incredible lawyer." And I said, "Wow, I just started." Why? And she said, "Because most lawyers, when you ask them what they do, they say, 'I'm an attorney.'"
Oh,
We're not. We're attorneys, of course we are.
I'm embarrassed.
But we're lawyers in this office, and we're counselors, and we're here to guide, and we're here to help you spend your money the right way. We're not going to overspend your money, but when we say you need A, B, C, and D, we'll do A if that's all you want. We'll put a note, recommended B, C, D, and E. But the reality is, when you're laying in the hospital bed and your daughter's calling Amy, it's probably too late to start estate planning then. So in addition to the seniors that might be watching this podcast, I would welcome them to share it with their children. Because guess what, children? You need this stuff too.
Yeah.
You're not immune because we're younger. We're just not immune. Tragedies, health issues, it happens at every age. On the news, they've been talking about it's happening more and more for younger people.
Yes.
We have to wake up. The law is the law. It may not make sense, but it is the law.
Right.
Every state is going to have a little bit of difference. And I know we're probably speaking to other states here.
Yeah.
So you would want to speak to your legal counsel in the state that you are a resident and domicile. Yeah. But if you are a Florida resident or you own Florida real property and you're not a Florida resident, you really need our assistance to protect your family and to protect yourself.
Right. Well, I think it's awesome. I applaud both of you. I think it's a great gift that you both have. You're compassionate, you're empathetic, your heart's involved, and you can't help but want to talk to you about something like that because you're going to feel comfortable with it. So we're happy that we could have you on our program. And I look forward to any questions that can come our way, whether it's through me, I'll pass them on to you, or they can call you directly. But thank you so much for being on the show. We're looking forward to having lots of questions.
Thank you so much for having us, Amy. It was a pleasure.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Senior Strategies. We hope that you found the tools and the strategies that we offered you beneficial for your journey as a caregiver. We want you to leave today feeling empowered and supported.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for upcoming shows and events. For more information, to schedule a consultation, or to join a support group, please contact us at 561-800-6654.
And remember the strategies
and tools you can use
to make your journey easier.